Okay, I think it's going. So, welcome to the Sangha UK. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon in Thailand, um, and I think about 10, 11 a.m. in the UK. And so I know that Pedro is in Italy, and Jesus is in Portugal, and Marcus is in Thailand, and Andre is fresh out of Dhammasala. Is that right?
Yep.
Where where are you located now?
No, I'm still there. I'm still in
Okay.
Dharamsala. Next week I'll
Wow.
be in Sikkim at this time.
Uh-huh. Okay, I'm impressed. And Kama, where are you from? Where are you located currently?
I'm in England today.
England, right. Okay, I can actually hear it in the voice now.
Yes.
Okay. So, as we had started out, we can revisit a little bit of the topic. Is that we can say that there is two Buddhisms. There is the Buddhism that most people believe in at the ordinary level. It's the Buddhism that they bring in. That's the first teachings. It's the baseline or the starting point. And that you could say that everybody that comes to the actual teachings of the Buddha, the noble teachings, has to come through their own way of getting there, bringing their own baggage along with it. And as that baggage accumulates, it becomes a form of Buddhism itself. And that we can label that actually as culture. Like, for instance, you have a Tibetan culture or a Thai Buddhism, a Tibetan Buddhism, an Indian Buddhism. And to now we've got the new kid on the block of Western Buddhism, along with Zen and Chan um, and the Thai forest tradition and all of that kind of stuff. Now, because it's the Westerners who are going into the Dhamma. And so, as a collective kind of label, all of the Western people are bringing a lot of their own stuff. And that the question then just got raised is, well, what about the dark night of the soul? And my answer to that is spot on. That's right, Western of you, right? That's a really clear and interesting point, and it seems to be now a major item on the list of what is Buddhism in the West. And we can say first off that we know exactly where the phrase came from, and those who really know exactly what the meaning of it is. And yet it's misapplied quite easily with Western Buddhism in their misunderstanding of the actual teaching of the Buddha. So, what is then the dark night of the soul? It first off came from St. John of the Cross, and that many of the Christian saints and mystics will have a dark night of the soul, and sometimes that dark night of the soul starts in Middle Ages and they die with it years later. Then, in fact, one of the examples, one of the newer examples of this is Mother Teresa, who got quite a lot of bad press from uh, Christopher Humphreys or whatever his name was, Christopher Hitchens, right? And he was kind of spot on about her, but he was there just watching what was going on. Where later we found out truly that she was in the dark night of the soul because of her memoirs that weren't published until about 20 years after she died, where she really was going through a dark night in the sense of here she is, a very high class, high quality, well known nun, world example of it. Been talking to Jesus day in and day out, and he ain't answered once. He never came up. He never answered my prayers. Why does Jesus and God not answer me? Okay, which actually, if you think about it from the perspective that she's in, is it becomes the dark night of the soul because she has thrown everything into Christianity. She has thrown absolutely 100% of all of her faith, her reason, and everything into this is the way to go, and she's getting no results. She's got no out. She's got no option. She is in the depths of despair, so depressed and so in the depths of ain't got no way out, got no help coming, and I don't know what to do. Pretty dark night, huh? That's where that comes from, and it's quite common in Christianity, quite more common than a lot of people want to recognize. Now, the problem with it is that they've got nobody to run to actually get some help, because their teachers and their fellow monks and nuns and whatnot in their order, or all of that, is either in the depths of it or about to slide into it anyway. That they can't go to the teacher and have the teacher bring them through the dark night of the soul, which basically the throughness of the dark night of the soul is pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and boogie on down the road. No help coming. No possibility of any help coming. Okay? But in Buddhism, you see, there was never any help coming in the first place. So why should we call it a dark night of the soul? We've grabbed a term out of medieval Christianity and applied it to something that is completely different within the Buddhist. So this is a real misapplication of the term, because with the dark night of the soul, that's just just a phrase or just a phase we go through. To where the real dark night of the soul is kind of heavy duty. Okay, so with that as context, we can then look at, well, where does this idea of the dark night of the soul come from within the context of Buddhism? What in Buddhism is there that's got this application? And the answer to that is, let us say, a 5th century AD blog that is a portion that was added to and put into the Visuddhimagga. Its roots go back to the Patisambhidimagga from the 3rd century, and that it is basically known in Western Buddhism as the 16 stages of insight. Have you ever heard of that phrase, 16 stages to insight? Okay. That the 16 stages of insight is not something that comes out of the time of the Buddha. It's not the teaching of the Buddha. It's a teaching that can get actually in the way of understanding the teachings of the Buddha. And that here's kind of the point, that in the practice that they do, they actually are practicing part of the Eightfold Noble Path, most notably sati and ditthi, to wake up and take a look. And they call this noting. But they don't do all of the Eightfold Noble Path, especially the 3rd item on the list, which is right noble effort. Once you see the dukkha, make a change. Now this, in fact, what I'm talking about is all over the suttas. First off, we're talking about hindrances. Certainly you guys have known about hindrances. Okay, well, if you've been practicing correctly and you've got no hindrances, where is this confounded dark night of the soul? Ain't no there. Then, in fact, the real teachings of the Buddha is good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end, when it's taught properly in the right phrasing, in the right context, and the right timing. Where's the dark night of the soul in there? There's not. But by the time it got into the 5th century AD, Buddhism had been poisoned, specifically by the Brahmins. They wanted to turn it into a religion. There's a whole lot of history that we can go into, and arguments are actually intercourse that I've had with Bhikkhu Buddhadasa about that kind of stuff. Very, very interesting. But the point is that it's not the real teachings of the Buddha, that it's kind of sophomoric, literally sophomoric, in the sense that it's got a lot of wisdom in there written by a fool. And so it's got a lot of magical stuff in it. Now, here's where the dark night originates, or let us say that part of the 16 stages of insight is with the Mahasi method of noting and seeing and looking and labeling over and over and over again. You begin to see everything begin to dissolve and fall apart. But the student at that level is not ready for such terrifying kind of things, and they become frightened, which, by the way, I've already gone through the first 5 or so stages of the 16 stages of insight, arriving at stage 6, fearfulness, and then misery, and then disgust and despair. All right, here's your dark night of the soul right there. It's written right in the literature, despair. But that's only step 10 or so, followed by a strong, strong desire to get out of your own self-made misery, except for one thing. And that is, everybody who I know comes to Buddhism before they learn anything about it. They come because they've already got this kind of, I want out of here. I already know enough about dukkha. I want out. See, most ordinary people, they don't even understand what dukkha is. In order to get on the noble path, you got to understand dukkha a little bit, in the sense of, ouch, this is me and it hurts. But most people go one step further and not even stay on that point. Ouch, you stop hurting me. And that's where the rest of the world is. They're in the blame game. They want it to be somebody else. We need a God. We need a Jesus. We need a devil. We need a savior. We need a king. We need a slave. We need somebody else to fix us. And the entire teachings, by the way, of the Second Noble Truth, the whole point of the teaching of the Second Noble Truth is it's your own greed, your own delusion, and your own stupid ignorance that's causing your own problems. And when we, yes, Marcus, oh, please come in.
often in the Burmese practice, there's kind of precedence or importance over the 3 characteristics over the 4 Noble Truths. And I found that to be the case in a lot of discussion.
Yes, absolutely. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. But is it that sequence? Is that linear? Do you even know where it comes from and what the connection is? The actual phrasing is Sabbe Sankara, Sabbe Anicca. I've forgotten my Pali. It'll come back in a moment. Anyway, first off, it starts with all compounded things are anicca. Okay, Sabbe Sankara Anicca. I got it now. Okay, Sabbe Sankara Anicca. Sabbe Sankara dukkha. Sabbe Dhamma anatta. Did you catch that difference? Sabbe Sankara, anicca. Everything that's put together is will eventually fall apart. One of the things we don't understand a lot is that the surface of the ocean, along with the sunlight that hits it and the turbulence, because of the surface tension, what happens is quite often that hydrogen and the oxygen molecules will separate. This is one of the things that keeps refreshing the uh, and is a great source of the oxygen. That a lot of people, that the scientists weren't understanding that, because we had the idea that once the oxygen and the hydrogen are bound together, it takes a great deal of energy to break them apart. Guess what? They get that energy out of the sunlight. Because if you're just breaking one molecule apart at a time, it doesn't take much energy to do that. And there's plenty of energy to do it one molecule at a time. And in that regard, we can understand that even water is not permanent. Isn't that interesting? Water itself is not permanent. Nothing is. Anything that's stuck together can fall apart. Sabe, Sankara, anicca. Next point. Sabe, Sankara, dukkha. In other words, basically, it's death, because anything is subject to breakup and decay, it also dies. That's part of the definition of death and dukkha. And so the next one is the sabe. Hang on a second, let me get the door closed. Loud Thai TV. So the next one is Sabe Dhamma Anatta, which is the interesting point. Now, the Sabe Anatta, that is all Dhamma. There is no inherent self anywhere. There is no isness in anything, because everything is temporary.
So what's the point of the distinction then? Sankharas are formed by an action, but is it also just saying absolutely everything, including unconditioned things, are not attributed to self,
Right,
including nibbana? So nibbana by definition isn't.
right.
Yeah.
Here's the point: is that the sankharas actually do exist, but an atta, an essence, doesn't and never did exist anywhere. The example is with Nagarjuna and Malinda and their chariot, and taking the chariot apart. Where's the chariot? The chariot it doesn't exist, except perhaps inside the human mind. That in fact, when I was start talking about the story, doesn't you actually invent a chariot? Susan, do you invent a chariot? When I just said chariot, don't you have one in mind? Maybe a dozen or so, huh? Right. So that's where the chariot exists. It exists not in a real place, it's in an imagination. So if we understand it like that, then we can say, well, how does this anicca, dukkha, anatta thing fit together? And the way that it looks like is that it's in sequential order. And the sequential order is, first you've got turmoil, and then you've got dukkha, and then you've got some kind of enlightenment after that once you figure out that there's no self. Is that kind of the sequence that it goes?
Yes,
Kind
this,
of over
this is
time?
how I'm being taught by the teachers in the Goenka system. Like anicca
Okay.
supports dukkha, and then dukkha and anicca supports anatta.
All right. Well, here's the time frame and the time difference then. Think of it not as a linear thing, but more like on a road, there's a T or a Y. And here you come down the road of anicca, everything's changing. And every time something changes, you've got a choice. Are you going to take the fork of anatta? There's no problem. Or are you going to take the fork of dukkha? There's a me here that doesn't like that the change happened. Right? So this is the way that we would see anicca, dukkha, anatta. In fact, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa adds to that and puts a kind of almost a little poem of Pali together. Anicca, dukkha, anatta, tatata, sunyata, and atamayata. Have you heard that phrase, Marcus, before?
I'm not sure. Maybe I've read it in English actually.
Yeah,
However,
anicca, dukkha, anatta, tatata. Tatata means right here, right now. Let's do it right here, right now, which is the whole idea of the fork in the road. You've got a choice. Are you going to do it right now? Or are you going to do it the way that you're in the habit of doing, which probably hurts? Okay. So the anicca, the dukkha, anatta is actually in the Mahasi Vipassana way is still in that sequential events, just like the 16 stages of insight. I mean, there are stages there. They're supposed to be a sequence of events. So
okay.
So
the big distinction in that we should be trying to see through is the same point of trying to find the key to unlock the door when the door is already unlocked.
Right. That's the old joke, right? The old the young monk, Western, by the way, goes to Tibet, climbs the highest mountain, finds himself up there because he's heard that there's an old Tibetan guru up there someplace, and he gets up to there and he finally finds the old man and he says, Master, what is the key to the universe? And the master says, I don't know. I didn't know there was a key. And the guy just turns around dejected, and the old man says, but the universe has been left unlocked. Exactly so. The universe has been left unlocked. And so, and that comes back to the concept of tatatha. And then the next is sunyata. Everything is empty. Everything is pointless. I mean, you go around asking, what's the point? What's the meaning of life? What's it all about? Alfie was a song out of the 60s. You know what I'm talking about? Right. The older you get, the more you get stuck in that one. All right. And it rots very quickly for children into why me? What's the meaning of all of this? All right. And guess what? It's empty. And mostly because it's empty of self, because there is anatta, because it really is empty. Everything is pointless and meaningless, and you're going to have to make your own meaning, make your own point. What's your point in life, Marcus? The Buddha had his point, dukkha, dukkha, nirodha, or anicca, dukkha, anatta if you want to. But I mean, he made his point solidly, and it stuck. What's your point, Marcus? What's your meaning in life? Why are you here? I can ask him because he's a good friend and I can tease him, you know. That's the real question to ask is, you know, like that question, when it's asked correctly, is what we mean by the duty to the Dhamma, that we have a duty to the Dhamma. Once we understand the right way to go, we're obligated to go that way. We do, in fact, open up, see what's going on so that we can become conscious of it, and then we let our conscience be our guide. We watch where we're going in the present moment. So going back to the 16 stages of insight now, the next step along the way, after we have that strong desire to get out of the dukkha, that we, by the way, manufactured for ourselves in the first 10 or so steps of the Mahasi method, with all that there noting, we start to take the right effort. I got to get out of this. I got to do something. And what is done then is the right effort. In fact, in the English, the way that it's normally described is redoubling our effort, to start putting the right effort that needs to be put in. And this is step 11, followed by step 12, which is, by the way, the Four Noble Truths. The Mahasi method waits until step 12 out of 16 to introduce the Four Noble Truths. Hey, folks, something strange here, isn't it? That they keep having you to look at anicca and dukkha. Anicca and dukkha. Maybe you'll find anatta sometime. Anicca and dukkha, and anicca and dukkha. And it's like digging your grave with your own shovel. Yes, Marcus.
Yeah, just an interesting thing I thought of before with the 16 stages is that is it just an analogy for life before finding the Four Noble Truths, before figuring it out?
Actually, that's that is beautiful. That's what it is. It's a metaphor for what we do.
It's like the path towards that, or the story that's made before figuring something out.
Yeah, look at the fact that almost everyone goes through the first 10 steps of the 16 stages of Anapanasati before they ever even hear about meditation. In fact, they begin to go searching and find out about Anapanasati and meditation simply because they've seen through enough of it to recognize that there's a bunch of shadows, there's a bunch of lies here going on. Things are falling apart. I don't like it that way. Okay, there's your anicca and dukkha already there, built into us. And so the way that we should actually introduce then the teachings of the Buddha is with exactly what the teachings of the Buddha were. And the Buddha says, I teach only one thing, and that is dukkha nirodha. The way that it winds up being practiced in Western Buddhism, that I won't have to call it Mahasi anymore because that's basically it, is dukkha. Dukkha. Look at dukkha. There's some dukkha. Dukkha, I see dukkha. That dukkha is connected to this dukkha. Let's chase that dukkha right down to the dukkha hole. And we do that for hours, waiting for the bell to ring. And we never get around to the actual teachings of the Buddha and the Eightfold Noble Path to find that step 3 of what is the right noble effort. What do we actually need to do that takes the effort? And the effort that we need to take is, once we see the dukkha, is to come out of it immediately. Sidestep it. Don't let it hit you. See it flying through the air with the greatest of ease. Only it missed you a mile. This is the actual teaching of the Buddha. Yes, Andre.
Is it possible that because I've been traveling quite a lot in Thailand and India and these countries, and I also
know you're a true seeker. You are a Dhamma bum. I know you. I got your message. I got you.
And to me, it's very apparent the difference in the minds of the people, right? And so it was very interesting when you bring up that, for example, Tibetan Buddhism is 70% Tibetan culture, 30% Buddhism, and it's a little bit less in Thailand, and so on and so on. But the amount of mental identification in the West is just so much stronger than it is in any of these places that I've been before. We're so used to using the mind for everything, and so could it be that, yeah, just this method, just stepping out of dukkha, I can see whenever things are going well, when there's not, so much identification in my mind at the moment, it's a much easier thing than when there have been points in my life where I'm living this life and I'm doing this, that suddenly becomes much more difficult. And then these other steps need to be because the mind is...
Let me break in right here to mention that this is the reason the Buddha recommended seclusion. You gotta get away from it all. You gotta make it as easy on yourself to change as possible so that the right effort is possible. It really, really is hard to get over pain when you're on fire. Okay?
So
You
is this
can't
really
do it.
then...
You got to get yourself into a state of comfort. In fact, this is part of the Anapanasati Sutta, is you've got to get the body in a safe, comfortable place so that you can practice feeling safe and comfortable. You can't practice feeling safe and comfortable if you're not actually safe and comfortable. Now, we got to add some reality to the show here. All right, so that's the whole point then, is that we've got to go practice where we've guaranteed success. And then we take that success out into the world to conquer the real dragons. We got to play with our toy sword until we're sure we can take on a dragon. Because after all, the dragon that you got to slay is one in your own mind anyway. So this is actually now the actual beginning then of the noble path, is the right effort that it takes to grab that demon by his shoulders and ask him to leave the bar. And there's so many sutras. I can give you reference after reference after reference about you have to remove the dragons and the demons and the broken stuff and the garbage and all of our smelly past. We have to forget that, throw it out, remove these hindrances, all the worries, all the flurries, all the desires, all the wants, all the hates, all of the rules, all of the rites, the rituals, all of the sila bhatta paramasa. In fact, as best we can, all of the sankhara, and just stay in this present moment, which is quite nice. We actually live in a paradise if we'd stop judging it according to our standards of judgment, which come out of our past. That in fact, what we could say is that everyone that has a personality, whatever it is, it's a personality, that personality actually comes from the rules of how we're supposed to be, as well as our inner child's response to it. And that becomes what our personality. And the whole teaching of the Buddha in the sense of the the Four Noble Truths is really seeing dukkha, really understanding and seeing the source of it, really experiencing what it's like to be free from it, and really figuring out that all of it is in this Eightfold Noble Path. When we can actually see that in the here now, we actually then are fully capable of understanding personality view, which is now the anatta, that you are not solid, you are not bound by your personality, that you can change, you can learn, you can grow. But you see, almost all of the religions that want to make money off of you, they want you to have a fixed soul. They can't change. You got to go to Jesus to get your soul fixed. You can't do it yourself. Okay, so in fact, you could say that the entire teachings of the Buddha is a DYI for I. It's a do-it-yourself instruction kit of changing. And what are we going to change? The absolutely easiest thing there is to change. This thought. Because they just go by. There's just one thought after another. You know how the human mind, one image after another, or one verbal thought after another, they just roll on by. So if they're there and so flippant and so intangible, you'd think it'd be easy enough to change, now wouldn't you? In fact, all you have to do is remember to change it. And the remembering to change it, in fact, has already changed it. Now you're remembering to change it. That's the thought. And so this is where the Mahasi or the Western Buddhism is that they have forgotten how important the quality of the Eightfold Noble Path is in the sense of the right effort to remove the hindrances. Now, it's very explicit in the actual Anapanasati Sutta of using the word gladdening the mind. Now, the interesting part about it is that it's not talking about gladdening the mind in the sense of just the thoughts, because that's more the content of the mind, but rather changing the state of mind. And when you change the state of mind, it will change the thoughts. And quite often the reverse is true too. You change the thoughts you're having, and it'll change your state of mind. For instance, oh, I hate this, is in one kind of state of mind. And then the next word would be, oh, never mind. And now the mind state has changed. And so the mind state can change if we start doing what we mean by gladdening the mind, by start having happy, wholesome thoughts, rather than unwholesome or ordinary kind of thoughts. That we have far too many ordinary kind of thoughts, which are mean like dead zero. And then we have a whole bunch of negative thoughts that range from -1 to minus, wow, how and I can we feel bad. And so the whole point here is by actually making the change from unwholesome into wholesome, actually means we're going to actually put a positive spin on things. Another way of thinking about it is that we're no longer going to be judgmental or seeing what's right and what's wrong, or what we would mean by a critical mind, and go back to the original job of mommy. Mommy gets really critical with a 5-year-old, but her original job with the tender infant of 5 days was to be nurturing. And this is what we need to do, is we need to start nurturing ourselves. Letting ourselves be okay the way that we are. Everything is all right here, right now, warts and all. And we don't have to sit there and enumerate the warts, which they want you to do in the Mahasi method. We just say you're already okay. Forget about it. Let the past go. And be here now with some really wholesome words and some really wholesome thoughts about what's happening right here, right now. Now that's the actual Eightfold Noble Path and Four Noble Truths, and that we can start on that as soon as we recognize I have seen enough dukkha already. And now I'm going to start dealing with it directly by shoving it aside, throwing it out. So here's a little example of this. Imagine that you're out on the road, and along down the way there you see a big truck coming. It may be even blowing its horn, telling you, here he comes. Now, the Mahasi method is to stand there and take it like a man, Mr. Popeye style, with Popeye the Sailor Man, and we just stand there and we just stop that truck, right? And it runs right over us. Or we can take the Western Buddhism's way of, they call it, by the way, choiceless awareness. Oh, I see that truck coming. I'm just going to get terrified and stand right here, terrified and all, watching that thing bear down on me, and then it hits me. choicelessly aware. It ain't so choiceless, is it? Because we're full of terror. And then there is the Buddha's way, the Anapanasati way, and that is just step aside, just get out of your own way, just move an inch or two and let it go. Right, rushing right on by. We don't have to get hit. We don't have to stand in our own way. So, this is the major change in the technique. Yes, Jesus, you've got a question. Go ahead.
Maybe I get this wrong, but I don't know if I heard or I read that we need to. I mean, what you say makes very sense and it's very beautiful to hear. I love it. But I heard that maybe they said we need to know every kind of dukkha before transcending them or something like this. I don't know if I read this from some teacher. I don't remember. Like we need to
now, okay.
feel the track over.
All right. So, in that regard, we can say that one of the examples that we can look at is the knower of the worlds, Loka Vitu. Okay, and that's in many of the chants. That's one of the things that is attributed to the Buddha, the knower of the world. Okay. Now, what that actually means is that we can see what culture is. We can see how it's got both benefit and dukkha built into it, and we can see that as culture. And the more we go into the Dhamma, the more we see the dukkha that's built into the culture. But we can see the dukkha from the beginning. Okay, so the point is that in the Visuddhimagga, they had already gotten to the point that the Buddha knows and names every fish in the ocean. Okay, that's the kind of point about how far do you go in detail of how much dukkha do you have to know. Because I imagine that when you said it the way that you did it, it's like having to name every fish in the ocean, right? Actually, there is only a few. That is, greed and ill will experienced ignorantly. And so we're actually, if you can get wise to what you're doing, you're down to two. When you want something you don't have, then that's dukkha. I love this. This is so beautiful. Listen to me. If you don't have something that you like and you want it, that means that it must be good and you would be better off if you had it. This kind of thought process goes through the mind, bingo, at 100 miles an hour. And so I'm taking it down into the details. All right. After we've decided that we would be better off with it, that immediately switches to I am not good enough now without it. And here is already the seeds of dukkha coming in. And so we now need it. Okay, we want it. And then we go so far in our ignorance to say, I really got to have it. I'll die without it. Now, I'm actually going through the stages of Paticca Samuppada here. In fact, making that strong connection in the sutras between the second noble truth and Paticca Samuppada, jumping right off at that point of the feelings. I want it. I like it. I gotta have it. And we need to see that and interrupt it. If we can't see that process going on, then we'll wind up in need of something and wanting somebody else to give it to us or hankering, and now we're in just a stream of bad feelings, this dukkhaville, which is also referred to as the four woeful states of being in hell or being a hungry ghost, a preta. Now that's it. In fact, we just described that. We become a hungry ghost. because we want something that we don't have. We can't be filled. I'm not satisfied. I'm completely dissatisfied because I can't get enough. I'm like the movie with Johnny Depp about the pirates that were all dead, and when they would drink their whiskey, it just ran right out because there was no innards in there. Okay, so that's kind of how we feel. It doesn't matter how much whiskey we drink, we just cannot get enough. Doesn't matter how many cars Jay Leno buys, he can't get enough.
I can ask a real question on the topic.
Yes.
A beautiful example with the moving car and what happens and how to avert dukkha. So with Anapanasati Sutta, the practical aspect sometimes that I struggle with is how to distinguish between stepping out of the truck's way without effort and with effort, which sometimes means, for example, if in a meditation some hindrance arises, when everything is going well, I can see the hindrance and then sort of consciously step away from it, like you described. But then there's other times where I feel there is aversion involved, right? So in this example, it would mean that I'm stepping away from the truck, but also there's this aversion and effort involved in it, which of course then creates dukkha. And sometimes I struggle with, for example,
notice that too. Notice that too. Notice that in fact that you're doing the right thing and that you don't like doing it. And see that too. All right. So, in the first way that you were talking, what came to mind is the statement of the Buddha that will keep it positive in the sense of the way that I say it is, aha, I see you, Mara. And in that regard, you did two of them right there in a row. Aha, I see you, aha, I see you, Mara. It happens really quickly, and you can start to catch those things that's going on in your mind, because it's like you've heard about it, a monkey mind. It's just jumping from limb to limb to limb, and basically the reason that the monkey mind jumps from limb to limb is it never lands on a limb it likes. It's always got to keep moving because this limb too is either dangerous or uncomfortable. And so what we really need to do is start practicing with the body, feeling safe and comfortable, safe, secure, and comfortable in an environment that's safe, secure, and comfortable, and then start having safe, secure, and comfortable thoughts. And as you have safe, here's a safe, secure, comfortable kind of thinking. I don't have anything to do right now. I can sit here and do nothing at all. This is my meditation, and I don't have to do nothing. So that's a very, very healthy thought, as opposed to the kind of thought, you got to meditate now, all right, because that's coming out of the superego, and the child doesn't like that. So we have to do it already in a nurturing way, starting off with the nurturing. Everything is really okay, and I'm going to do nothing right now. No place to go and nothing to do, and the spring comes and the grass grows by itself. This is a Japanese haiku, by the way, very famous by the Bushi. Yes, Jesus.
About the superego. If my top dog is saying you have to go meditate right now, and I don't like it at the moment to meditate, but it's the right thing to do, and now have a conflict there.
It depends. There's many, many different beautiful stories and ways to say it, and we can get around to some of those, and maybe one of them will really fit you. But basically, it's what that we have to do is to wake up to that. See, I see you, Myra, or aha, I see, I don't want to meditate as a thought. That's one of the ways of doing it. And by seeing that, there's a better way of doing it is to say, oh, thank you, what a good idea.
Okay. That's a good one.
That's the right effort that we need. Not the effort of going to meditate and not liking it. The effort is to come out of that pattern. That's the effort that we need.
Yeah.
I see that dukkha in that I don't want to meditate. Wow, and I can do it because I really like to meditate. Glad I thought of that one. And that's the way that we
This was
begin to
good one.
live our
Thank you. That
lives.
was
Yes, we begin to live our lives like that. Anything that you don't want to do, figure out that you don't want to do it and that you don't have to do it the way that you thought that you had to do it.
yeah, that's a good one. That's a good hack.
Okay, Andrew.
Yeah, this is a great conversation. And so I'm just trying to what Jesus and you are talking about. So coming back to this truck analogy and dukkha, basically cessation of dukkha. So I feel like sometimes my mind is, playing all the time. My mind is playing tricks on me, but sometimes
Did you hear what he said? My mind is playing tricks on me. I heard that.
Well,
never mind. Let's continue. Go ahead.
when the truck is coming, and I think it's what Jesus mentioned, where it's like, do we need to know the dukkha before we can end the dukkha, right? And so there's this
Watch
kind of
closely now. That's the whole point of the original point of the Mahasi method. But the right way to do it is thinking of it in the sense of one by one as they occur. This present moment, what's happening right now, analyze that.
But because sometimes we get these insights, and
don't never mind about the insights. Insights don't change you. Waking up and changing changes you. There is way too much involved with this insight thing. That's a whole lot of Western Buddhism. We're putting way too. Do you know that the word vipassana rarely occurs in the Majjhima Nikaya anywhere except in the section headings that the translator added? That's very interesting. The only place I've ever seen it is in the Western translations, mostly in the Satipatthana Sutta, number 10. So here's a point, is that there is a middle ages argument between samatha and vipassana. You probably heard about samatha vipassana, right? It was never an issue in the time of the Buddha. The discussion never existed. There are some places where samatha is used, and what it actually means is at peace, at rest, content, stable. It's used in reference also to sukha, going into upekkha. So it has to do with stability of the mind, but that stability of the mind can come from the first jhana, and that's where it's used to start, as well as the word samadhi. Why? Because we're gathering the factors together. So,
so for the practical purpose, if there's a truck coming and I don't even know that it's coming, but I can sense something and I step away because I know there's some dukkha coming, it doesn't matter. I don't care if it's a truck or if it's anything else. I sense
If
the
that
dukkha,
didn't
I step
happen,
away from that.
if that didn't happen randomly throughout most people's lives, they wouldn't survive. That in fact, you can say that most people, whether they're going to Buddhism or changing any religion or anything like that, they're nutcases. Their childhood didn't work for them, and they know it somehow. They won't admit it, most of them, but they know that something's broken and we got to fix it. And most people don't, because they just go around blaming whatever they don't like. And they don't really have any idea of dukkha at all. So you're in the lucky group that you can begin to see dukkha. Now, when you're waking up, you can begin to wake up more and more to begin to see that those kind of thoughts that you're having, or Jesus, is that the way that I'm supposed to pronounce your name? I've been calling you Jesus thinking that you had nail-scarred hands or something. So anyway, we've all got these unwholesome thoughts, and that we don't even recognize them and label them as unwholesome yet because they can't see them yet. But the time to see it is right here, right now, and the time to change it is right here, right now, plus a tenth of a second. That in fact, we live in a time range. We don't live in a split nanosecond. We live in about a half a second range. That's what we would refer to as a here now, well within our reaction time. And surprisingly enough, a lot of animals have much faster reaction times than humans do. Their survival depends upon it. You'd be surprised at how much mid-air collision happens between flying insects around a light bulb and the tongue of a gecko. I mean, there's a whole lot of near accidents and a whole lot of direct hits because that kind of stuff is happening pretty fast. And in fact, so much is happening. That's one of the beauties of modern science is that we can actually get high-speed cameras and slow stuff down to see how fast stuff really does happen, because we as humans live in a slowed down system. And kind of the way that that works is that we see, think, see, think, see, think, 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 see, think, see, think, see, think, think, think. I'm getting into Bolero now. See, think, see, think, see, think, think, think. That's how we do it. Look how much time that we spend in thinking when in fact we could spend all of our time of just seeing, just looking. This is actually where the Buddha is going to when we're talking about when let the seen be merely the seen and the heard be merely the heard and the cognized merely the cognized, that we don't have to think about it. We don't have to come to a conclusion. We don't have to create a mental image of it. We don't have to get hit like a truck with it, and we don't have to feel bad once we got hit and want to get up, etc., like that, and wind up as one of these hungry ghosts. That if we can stay in reality, then there is no possibility of dukkha. This is part of the teaching of the Paticca Samuppada, but unfortunately it's way down the line. Most people can't do that. We got to start where we can start. And the place that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa recommends starting is at Vedana, at feelings. But in order to be able to do that, one must begin to gain some control over their feelings. And this is where the teaching about Anapanasati comes in. That's not actually on the Eightfold Noble Path, but it fits right in the sense of having, in that Vedana section of the Anapanasati Sutta, having sukha and piti. Now, what is the sukha and the piti? Means that most of the time we either feel ordinary, like nothing much at all, and that's how we spend most of our time, is not having any kind of feeling, and we do have that no kind of feeling at all ignorantly, just not much feeling going on. We can get into reading a book. We can do some watching a TV. We can just get into a numb state. Oftentimes when we're being talked to by somebody else, we're not kind of listening and we're not kind of paying attention, and we're just kind of waiting for them to finish things. So there's that kind of feeling system. And then there is the negative feelings that can start with and ends with whatever degree of fear that we have. With fear comes anxiety, frustration, anger, sadness, a sense of loss, a sense of grief. And it all has to do with loss. And that feeling of fear actually is instinctual. It comes out of the self-preservation instinct. And ignorant people go around in one or two different kinds of states of fear most of their lives because of the false positive. In other words, the fear machine, the fear mechanism within us is running all the time, and we don't need it. We can shut it down for a while, take a rest. I'm in a safe place already. I don't have to feel for right now. Okay, and then on the other side, we have very positive feelings that I've already started mentioning them. The feeling of feeling safe and secure. What a marvelous feeling that is. Almost very few people are naturally in a state of feeling safe and secure, that everything is all right, no dangers, no worries. And then comfort. And when we can get the body feeling safe and secure and comfortable, then we can have safe and secure, comfortable thoughts, sometimes about the safe, secure, comfortable moment that we're in. Things like, oh, this is a nice breath. Well, I do feel really good. Well, this really is relaxing. I really do feel good right now. Okay, these are the kinds of thoughts that we can have that will lead us into the next step, which is the state of satisfaction. Now, with satisfaction, we have sukha. And sukha is exactly opposite of dukkha. Sukha is exactly opposite of dukkha. So when we have a state of satisfaction, then we're not, and I mean really satisfied, then we're not in a state of dissatisfaction. Now, it's actually quite possible for some students to be dissatisfied with the satisfaction they're in now. But was it satisfaction at all, or was it being dissatisfied because it's not enough and I want more? And here I am back wanting stuff I don't have again. And so, can we actually cultivate? It's good enough right now. This is enough. Whatever I've got, let it be enough. And that's how we actually work with right effort. The right effort that it takes to set stuff down and just let it be enough the way that it is, and we become satisfied. And we practice that, and we practice it, and we practice it. Pretty soon we get pretty good at it. We can actually do that. We can actually talk ourselves into feeling good. By getting into a safe place, we can talk ourselves about how safe we are, and we can begin to feel, you're right, I do feel safe. I don't have to write that letter to the boss. I can just sit here and feel safe, and I don't have to think about that at all. Okay, and as we begin to grow and build this, we begin to get the idea, I can do this. This satisfaction over and over again leads to success. And that's the next step. In fact, in these four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Noble Path, this is the Samma Sankappa that is referred to sometimes as right thought, sometimes translated as right intention. And this is where we're going, is the intention, or our underlying mood, or our underlying mental state. Now remember that we were born helpless. And because of that, we were dependent upon everything. So we started off a victim. We started off a loser. We started off one down. We started off not able to take care of ourselves. And then sometime along, before we were able to take care of ourselves correctly, we were put to work. Pick up your toys. Do your ABCs. Do your 1, 2, 3. You got your pants on backwards. You know, that kind of stuff. Telling us what to do. And here we go, piling on all of these supposed tos and all of these rules for the rest of our lives, carrying a huge bunch of baggage around. So this poor infant is like a vessel. You could say that the DNA is kind of shaped like a vessel. And what do we fill it with? All the junk of the supposed tos. We begin to throw all of the culture into it. We become culturated, cultified. Um, uh, we're no longer little barbarians anymore. We become civil, I guess is the word that they use, which means burdened down with a ball and chain so that we can't go wild the way that we actually are. And so then we grow up being a victim that's also burdened down. That in fact, this burden that we're carrying of society, the Buddha refers to that as in one of these woeful states as the domesticated animal. The woeful animal state means you got to do what you're told to do, and you don't get no reward for it. You just do what you're told to do. You've got a promise of a reward. You got a whole bunch of stick and the promise of a carrot, but carrots are not around, just the stick. And you got to do what you're told to do. And most of us grow up living our lives just like that, and we kind of get used to it and come back to a kind of a zero state that falls into fear, anxiety quite often. So, what we're going to do here with Anapanasati, according to the Buddha, is we're going to begin to change that one thought at a time, one feeling at a time, one mind moment at a time, one here now at a time. We're going to decide that things are changed. This second's not the same as the last second. Let's do it again. Let's practice anatta rather than our old choice of dukkha. And so over and over and over again, we keep practicing and we get good at it. And that's where the success comes in. And that success, then, the Buddha was known, by the way, as a lion, right? He was a lion. He did not go to somebody else's show. Wherever he went, he was the center of attention. That's in the sutras, by the way. In the Lion's Roar Sutta, by the way, number 12. So if we understand that what we're doing is we're gaining our mojo, we're coming out of being a victim of society, blaming society, and having to put up with society, is to transcend society. Get your mojo, get your strength, get your mind so straightened out that the society cannot affect you. You become buoyant. The heavier you are, the deeper we sink into society, and the lighter we are by throwing all those unwholesome thoughts out and having only happy, happy thoughts. We raise above the world. That's the Lokatara, the above the world, that translates, by the way, into the supermundane that we use sometimes. The supermundane, the Lokatara, means to be above it all. I once heard that everyone is an emperor of their own pile of dirt. The question is, are you going to be buried under your own pile of dirt, the victim? Are you going to be clawing your way out? Are you going to just sit on top of your own world? Your choice, your attitude. Your choice, your attitude. This moment, are you going to be on top of your own world, or are you going to be buried under your own dirt? So that's the actual teaching of the Buddha. And guess what? In that 16 stages of insight, the dark night of the soul is when they've dug themselves pretty deep in their own pile of dirt. And the whole idea is to not even try to climb or claw your way out. Just right now, come out. And when you find yourself back under your own pile of dirt again, just come back out. It's your thought, your mind. Learn to control it. Learn to change it. that this is real mental training. And the first training that we're going to put through is wholesome thoughts. One wholesome thought after another after another. See the beauty in the world. See that you live in a paradise. Begin to take a really positive Pollyanna attitude about things. And that will mellow into satisfaction at a really deep level. So we have to practice. And then, where's the dark night of the soul here? There's no dark night of the soul. We feel really good. That I can see that the dark night of the soul is one really disparaging thought after another. Oh, what have I got myself into here? I knew that because I was in Dhammagiri at Gawanka. So, this has been a long chat, but it's been really good, I think. Susan, what do you think?
I'm going to watch the recording. There's so much in it. This is so rich. So yeah, I'm really, taken with what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to meet you as a new friend. I hope to see you again.
You will.
All right. Jesus. Or as they say in Beatles, Jesus.
One week ago, we were talking about this one-to-one, and something clicked. Something clicked, and since that week ago, I don't remember feeling so good in a long time. Like the Sankappa just appeared everywhere, in the body, in the mind, and everything. It was like I could feel it. So thank you for that. Thank you for this chat again. Beautiful.
Excellent, excellent. Marcus, you're an old hand at this. What do you think about this particular version of it?
It's good. It ties into everything else. Nice and simple. Tathagata, right? What you see is what you get.
Yeah,
Don't need
it
to make
is.
anything else out of it.
It really is.
Unless
That's
you need to make the positive change, yeah.
Just making a positive change, put a real spin on positive spin on life every moment, every time you can remember. Keep at it, right? That's all that it takes. Such an easy thing to do, and yet so few people are capable of doing it. And that's really just the whole teachings of the Buddha, that I've broken it down in its minute detail today, but we can bring it back together. That it's a very simple practice. All we have to do, number one, is remember. Be here now, to wake up to this present moment. And then we can look. Actually, looking is natural, but we're going to actually intend to look. To really see, is this dukkha or not? We're going to inspect. We're going to actually pass every thought that we can think of to think about in the sense of sati, to remember, to look. Is this worth having or not? Can I do better than this or not?
Yeah, and that's right there in Anapanasati, isn't it? Yeah. Exalting the mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
That brightening the mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, Gerald, was it Gerald, I think, last week, talked about the Anapanasati as steps. But, and in the past, you mentioned it as a bit of a dance or a tango or a waltz. And I can kind of see how kind of circular the practice is in a way, you know.
Well, it always winds up now again.
Yeah, especially in the last three and four,
again.
the mind and Dhamma, right? It's just throwing it out, you know, and then coming back to breathing long, you know.
It's a very simple practice once we get to the rhythm of it. But we have to know the various components of it so that we can begin to practice each one. Actually, each one of these is a skill to be developed, right? Sati, we want to practice it often. Remember that each breath is a long breath. Remember that each breath is going to be an exhale, a long, easy, joyful exhale. So that's where we started immediately, is to start to build sati so that we've got it twice every breath cycle.
Yeah, for a while I was mistaken that the fourth tetrad, Dhamma, the Vipassana, right? It was something special, some kind of event thing.
Right, but
no,
here's
it's
the point:
just
we got to
not.
get
Yeah.
settled down. We got to be able to see straight. We got to get our feelings pleasant. We got to get the mind settled, steady, and then we can see all of this anicca, dukkha, anatta stuff that's in the fourth quadrant of the Anapanasati Sutta. Yeah, that's right. Here's the point: if you're going to teach a baby to swim, would you throw him into the deep water, or how about just swim in a wading pool to where all he has to do is to stand up or get his feet on the ground? So this is the way that we want to begin: is we want to give the kid some skills, and then we'll throw him in the deep end. And so those skills is the body, feeling, and mind, and then we'll dive right into looking at really what's going on, which is things changing. We don't like it, and everything is changing constantly. Anything that we don't like changes, then we feel bad. And so part of that understanding of nature is that we've already gotten the mind so steady that we can really see how vibrant the paradise that we live is.
And I guess just to
Constant.
tie this in with the Mahasi stuff that we're talking about, I was instructed on a Mahasi retreat to note things 3 times, but I thought it was weird because by the first time you've already noted it, it's already gone, and
It's
that's
gone.
kind of the
You've got something new
it,
to note.
yeah, exactly, and that, I think that is the anicca part of it, just not to cling on to these things that are coming up and let the new moment come up without interference. And
Now,
then
here's a point. Here's a point that's actually quite useful for folks, and that is the word noting is kind of a bad translation, because the Western mind thinks of noting as like taking a note, a sticky note, telling a verbal, almost telling a story, to where you can actually see things, a movement out of the corner of your eye, and you don't have to spend any time with it at all. That in fact, so much is happening, it comes under our field of view that we want to start paying attention to the more that is happening rather than getting stuck on one thing, focused and concentrated. And in fact, Anapanasati, the Buddhist teaching, is about samadhi, which does not mean concentration. It means waking up and taking in all of that which is available to actually be vibrantly alive in the here now, in our senses, as opposed to being overly focused or overly concentrated on some object of meditation. And so this is another example of the Western Buddhism kind of being, they get a hold of this word concentration and they say, yeah, I know how to do that. Yeah, I know how to do that. I can get really, really concentrated. So this is not what we're practicing. We're practicing continuously waking up into the present moment, taking a look at what we're doing and making a change and congratulating ourselves, and waking up again and taking a look and making a change and congratulating ourselves again, over and over and over again. And when we do this, the mind becomes unified. We become friends with ourselves. that we stop with all of these critical thoughts and start nurturing, because the wholesome thoughts that we're having are now wholesome thoughts about how nice everything is and how you are already forgiven of your sins. All you have to do is recognize that you're forgiven already. Your past is good enough. We don't have to go make up for the past or fix anything. It's dead, it's gone. And so we can just dispense with the past. We don't need it. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't have any memories. But in fact, if you're going to be changing the oil on your truck the way that you did last month and the month before, months ago, and now all of a sudden you hear Buddhism and you forget about the past, does that mean you forget how to change your oil? No. No, we don't mean it like that. I mean the kind of memories that we use for, like, reading is a memory. Learning to get to your computer to turn it on. We're not talking about losing all of your memory. We're talking about instead using the past to determine how we feel right now. And it's better to feel the way that we want to feel, because we felt bad a lot in the past. This kind of a toss-up, a merry-go-round. Sometimes we feel good, sometimes we feel bad. And so if we go into memories, we're going to get some bad along with the good. But if we practice Anapanasati correctly in the here now, then we're having all good thoughts to build up into our Sankara base. We begin to build up some wholesomeness in our life. We begin to change our patterns and therefore changing our habits. Our neural pathways begin to change. And this is the liberation. The liberation. Actually, we have to point something out. Freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. Are you willing to go through that? I mean, how bad do you want moksha? Because what it means, moksha means that you're free because you've got nothing left to lose. You've already chucked it all. And what is that all? The stuff that we're carrying around from our past. So we have to let go of the past and be here in the present moment so that we can be free to make the kind of choices about how we want to feel right now. And in the beginning, there's a time that comes by for good meditators when it's yippee-ki-yo-ki, this is no good kind of feelings. And then later, it's like, kind of feelings. But always, it's our choice. Because we've been practicing. So that's what I advise you to do, is to practice well over and over and over again. One last joke. And that is that the entire teachings of the Buddha is on the back of every shampoo bottle that's in all the grocery stores. What is that teaching of the Buddha? Rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat. Rinse, clean your mind out, and then do it again. And then do it
Interesting to
again.
note too how the Buddha spent a lot of his time, in meditation. He wasn't
Actually,
finished in a way like.
No. He was finished enough that he knew how to meditate good enough.
That's what I mean. I mean, there's nothing else to it, really.
Well, you after whatever you do, and as far as you go in anything like that, with any labels that you want to put on it, that doesn't change the clock. You still have 24 hours a day. And then the time of the Buddha, nobody had any radio or television or musical instruments or sound equipment, nothing. And so people spent a lot of time telling stories to each other, and the Buddha recognized that the storytelling is culture, and we're making each other miserable with our stupid stories.
I'm saying this because I've come across people who think they're done, and myself in a way too, and that I've reached the end point, so to speak, and then you don't practice these skills, and then it becomes more difficult again.
Well, that's exactly right. That, in fact, that's a kind of a thought. That's a conclusion. That's a concept. I have already arrived, therefore there's nothing left to do. When in fact the way that correct practice is, well, right now things are good enough. Right now this is good enough. I don't have to put a label on it. I like it, but I don't have to label it. I don't have to note it in the sense of or thinking that there is a goal or a destination. But in fact, Westerners are very, very goal-oriented, very, very destination-oriented, and some of them get the delusion that they've already arrived there. So there's a few jokes that I could tell about that, too. Like, Moses, when he found the burning bush, you know what the burning bush said to Moses? Moses, take off your shoes, for thou art upon holy ground. So I go around barefoot. I recognize that I'm always on holy ground. Here it is. The only time I put on shoes is to walk across the concrete street to go into the bank. Because I know that the bank, it's a different kind of holy. So it's okay to wear shoes in the bank. It's expected. But anyway, the other one is the issue about the pilgrim and the pilgrim's progress. When the pilgrim is progressing, he's not in the holy place. What does the pilgrim do when he finally reaches the holy site? Well, in the Middle Ages, they just pick up and go to the next holy site. They spent 99% of their time on their way to a holy site, and once they got to the holy site, they didn't stay. Once you find that you've gotten yourself into a holy site, there you are. But don't make any decisions about it, because you probably won't stay. Stay as long, sustain it, get it going, but let it go when it's gone. And you'll find it soon enough again. But when you think that, I have arrived, without actually understanding that the arrival is not of what you've done, but in the fact that you've wound up being in a paradise, in a holy place. You see the difference? And these guys, they want to attain something. They work really hard to it. They put labels on themselves. Only in the West for people to take pot shots at them. That's part of Western Buddhism. You see, in Asia, they don't do much of that. For one thing, the monks don't claim much of anything, but a whole lot of other people will claim it about him, but the monk himself doesn't claim it. A good example was Mahabohi. You know about him, to where everybody knew he was an arahant, but he didn't talk about it. Though he gave lectures on Can Arahants Cry? I mean, if you're going to give a lecture on what is an arahant, you're almost giving it away, but you don't say it out loud. So that's the thing, that there is no goal anyway. What an arahant is one who's actually enjoying the journey, where there's no place to go and nothing to do. And just enjoy the show. So that's what we can practice. There's no place to go and nothing to do. Just enjoy the show. The spring is coming. Watch. Pay attention. Notice what's happening. Be here now. Wakey, wakey. That's all there is to the teaching of the Buddha. And it is marvelous. It gets even more marvelous once you get into the flow. They actually speak of that flow that I'm talking about. It's called the Sotapan, the stream enterer. And yet in Western Buddhism, it's just another thing to cling to. And so that's the issues about Western Buddhism. We can go on and on about it, but I think that we've gotten some stuff out of today's talk already. So let's finish it now. Thanks. I really appreciate it, guys.
Thank you too. Yeah, thank you, everybody.
I really
Thank
like
you.
talking about I really like to talk about the Dhamma.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Goodbye.
We'll see you, Marcus.
Thank you, Dhammarato. Bye. Bye, everybody. Have a good day.
Take care.
I'll see you soon. Ciao, ciao.